Hi, it's Rete here. When people ask me, what is your favorite console, I always reply with Sega Dreamcast. This is because I believe the Sega Dreamcast was the most influential console and perhaps a console that was the most ahead of its time when it was released. First, a little bit of history. The Sega Dreamcast was released in North America on September 9, 1999, following up the mediocre Sega Saturn. It is special in the fact that it was the first video game console in the sixth generation, the generation that brought us the PlayStation 2 and the Xbox. It was also the first console that had internet support, and this came in the form of both online gaming, which was revolutionary at the time for consoles, as well as being able to use your console as a web browser. The Sega Dreamcast itself was a little box about the size of a personal pizza. It had 4 ports for controllers and had a top-down loading CD-ROM drive. Although nothing about the console really looks special, perhaps the most unique feature is that it does have a modem, and that you can connect your phone line to it and connect to the internet. The controller is a little bit more unique. It has a D-pad, an analog stick, as well as 4 buttons and 2 triggers on the back, as well as a start button. It also has a hole where the VMU would be inserted. One of the more unique aspects of the Sega Dreamcast was the visual memory unit, or VMU. Now, as you see, it is set up like a memory card, so this would go inside the controller, and this is the memory card, per se, of the Dreamcast. However, it's unique in the fact that it's got a little screen. So I've got one over here that has batteries in it, and you can see when you first boot it up, it wants me to go through this whole process. So I can set the date even. We'll just pick some random date. See, this one came out in 2000. And you can even set the time. And it's this neat little thing. And you've got basically a smaller controller, so you've got the little D-pad here, and then A and B buttons sleep in mode. So when you boot it up, you see there's Sega Visual Memory. If I press the sleep button, it just sort of goes off. Press it again, it turns back on. So now I have several options. If I go mode, it will cycle through them. The first option, if you click here, is where you can see what games are on it. Now, there's 6 different games. So you see there's Sega GT, then you keep going, Virtua Tennis, etc., and it shows you all the games that are on it, Quake 3 Arena. Now, if I wanted to pick one of these, I can go to the right, and tells me like the actual name, how many blocks it takes up, and then I can copy delete it if I want to. And one of the cool little features that these have is you can actually transfer data across. So I have Quake 3 Arena here. If I want to transfer that, I just go to the right, and it should open up, and I can go to the right again, Quake 3 Arena, 25 blocks, and I can copy it. Now if I have this in the file section here, all I have to do is hook these together. As you can see, they are set up so that they are compatible to hook onto each other. I just do this. If I press copy, it'll ask me if I want to copy, and then it copies. Now it says there's not enough free memory, but if there was enough free memory, it would copy it from one memory card to the other, which is a very cool and kind of a unique feature of these VMUs. And there are a couple of other modes. So if I press the mode button, I can go down here, and this is the game mode. If I press A, you can actually load a game onto it. So this is from Sega GT. You can see it says Sega GT Pocket America. So if I press A and B, it gives me the option, training, quick race, storehouse, etc. Sound. So I'm going to do, let's turn on sound. Sound on. Alright. Let's do quick race. And you can see it's a whole little mini game. So I'm driving the car and I move it around using the D-pad. There's a clock going down and hearts I can lose, and there's obstacles, and so I have to avoid the obstacles. Now granted, it is running a little bit slowly, and part of that I think is just because it's the first level, but I collect the heart and it's a little beep, so it's really cool because your memory card, the VMU, is actually acting as like a miniature little portable game system. And this is just a feature that I find really clever and really entertaining. Oh, and I can spin out. Something that really hasn't been attempted recently. Now there is talk that the new Wii is going to have something like this where the gamepad could also serve as a portable console, but so far that hasn't been confirmed. Now if I also go to mode, I can go to this here, and it's just a clock, so I can see the date and then this video of a dog moving around. One more awesome feature that the VMU has is it can use the screen during games. So if I take a standard Dreamcast controller here, I can just insert the VMU into the slot there, and it can act as a screen in-game, which is a very unique thing as well. Now, it's interesting to note that this screen actually was copied later on. And the Wii U has a similar sort of thing with its controller, where the gamepad has a screen on it as well. And that's just one of the many things that the Dreamcast did first that were later implemented on future consoles. And there's a whole list of these things. In particular, the original Xbox has many aspects that are very similar to and were perhaps even inspired by the Sega Dreamcast. Perhaps the most obvious of these is the controller. The controller has many similarities. For example, the layout is virtually identical. The only difference is that the Xbox controller has one more right stick, which the Dreamcast controller does not have. The buttons are the same placement and also have the same colors, albeit in a slightly different order. In addition, both controllers have memory card slots, which is a feature that, as far as I'm aware, is unique to these controllers. One more similar feature with respect to the controllers is the triggers. The Dreamcast was the first console with a trigger that was not a single button. It had a range that it could go in, like the triggers we know nowadays. And the Xbox controller took that exact idea, and as you can see, both of them are very similar in their makeup. One final similarity, and perhaps the most important, is that the Sega Dreamcast was powered by Windows CE, which was a version of Windows that was designed for low power or portable systems. And this meant that the console ran DirectX, and although the console failed, Microsoft was able to use the same concept for the Xbox. If you didn't know, the DirectX is what the Xbox is named after, DirectX Xbox. So considering that the Dreamcast was incredibly influential on the design of other 6th generation consoles, including the Xbox, why did the Sega Dreamcast fail? Well, for starters, the Sega Dreamcast did not support DVDs. Sega instead chose to put their games on the proprietary GD-ROM, which was a gigabyte disc. Both the PlayStation 2 and the Xbox supported DVDs, and so they could double as DVD players. And so, while minor, this definitely affected it a little bit, and the GameCube also ran into this trouble a little bit without being able to play DVDs. However, the most important reason for the failure of the Dreamcast was simply cost. The Dreamcast was released a couple years earlier than the rest of the 6th generation consoles, and then when the PlayStation 2 and Xbox came out, they were forced to cut their costs. Sony, even, for example, had complete control of the supply chain. Like, they were able to make many of their own chips, whereas Sega was forced to purchase chips elsewhere, and thus they were losing money on each console they sold. Unfortunately, Sega discontinued the Sega Dreamcast in North America in 2001. However, I think the legacy of the Sega Dreamcast lives on. Although it flopped, there were many new features that it did that were way ahead of its time, and ultimately would become industry standards. Although Sega would never make another console, the legacy lives on. That's all, folks, and thank you for watching.